I want to introduce the first panelist, Cameron Adams. He's ininiw-Anishinaabe in French, Canadian, and Scottish and English ancestry from Gimli, Manitoba, and Treaty from the Berens River, Memewiziibing, and then situated in Treaty 5 territory. And for the last decade, Cameron has been learning about the ancestral routes, and he's currently in his last year of the education program at the U of W. And then last year, he spent 3 months with us at the camp, at our Kanyasa culture camp, learning language, learning culture, and learning ceremony, and then maybe learning how to snag. No? I married him off about 5 times, so I'm not sure if he's married off yet. So that's what he gets for hanging out with us, right? Maggie, Biagioni. I met her, and I was so amazed. We got flown into northern BC, and then this is a town or a city, I will say, right? It's a city now. Terrace BC. So if anybody has ever driven Highway 16, the Yellowhead, all the way to Prince Rupert and then even to Haida Gwaii. This is a city that's just in beautiful territory up there. So we were up there, and we were there to provide maybe just some a cultural exchange. That's what I'll call it. It was a cultural exchange. And it's Nishka, Tsimshian, all these different nations that are up there that we got to meet. And some of it was done in ceremony, some of it was an exchange in language and all this. But that's where she's from. She's a registered nurse up there. She's a mother, and she has roots in all the way to Cumberland House. So dialect speaker. And I was amazed because she's like, okay, I want you to meet my family, like, where are you going to be? We should have lunch, or so we should host you, right? And that's what we do. So I show up, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be at this place at this time, show up with the family. Here, she started talking to me in Cree, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing in the middle of northern, BC, to have somebody, Kagagyugo, to be visiting me in Cree. And I'm like, okay, I had her in the back of my, this plan that I was working up. And then the last one over there, Levi, Wolf. And then Wolf with an E at the end. I recognize this right away. And then Nuahumau, this is my relative. And I know his family, and I go support his family and his the lodges that they hold, horse dance, chicken dance, the sun dance. So Skapiu soon, he's from Onion Lake, and he's taking the a BEd program here as well, the ATEP program, and just about to finish that as well. So again, these are the 3 youth that I assembled. I wanted to break up some of the questions, to share strategies, methodologies, and what worked, and so on. So the first question, maybe I'll go with Cameron. This is a foundational question. Why did you want to invest time into learning this Indigenous language?
Askiwana aspin. Niswo kichimitata tumitino mitata Nikotaso sap pipon pagagam igwa nina nigi menenitin ta kyogwagwe gagek kakino awia kaki ininiw chekuta Manitoba paketika kauchian. I started learning about 6, maybe 7 years ago, Swampy Cree, and it was really exciting for me to kind of learn and visit with people who I had the opportunity to speak this language. In my family, Niminisuin, Nichapan, Egio Bigot, Kinusiwasipi, Kiwetinok. My great-grandmother was raised in a Norway House in Treaty 5 territory. Igwagagio Asisit, Egikiskanahamaswichik, Uichisanak, Ego Wina, Umaininiw and Gasinegate Gokuta. My great-granny and her siblings grew up speaking Swampy Cree. Nigikiskanahamas, Umagiskane tamuin, tanse gagi wigachik, ego tanse gagi giskin tamagik, Niwakumagana kayas. I learned how they, their knowledge a little bit, as they were years ago, and I learned that the Indigenous language my family had spoke was this Swampy Cree. About high school, grade 12-ish, I really started getting into this. I had already learned French conversationally. Iguanina, Nigimeninitin tapit manu meninimuin. Ego tamasanay kian, taimishtigan, kakano. Keguan. I was going to say Kigwe. I'm like, no, Keguan, Kakano, Keguan. It was really intriguing to be able to see what an Indigenous language would do for me, but also what it would teach me about my family and that. Because there was inner values that I was learning, right? Wagutuin, people would always ask, oh, tante o chiquia, tante o chiquina, tansika sinikasu chickiniga higuak, kukum, kimosum kagano, right? They'd want to ask about your kinship. They want to say where you're from, right? They want to kind of get to know you. It's your worldview is it's quite different in an Indigenous language than it was in English, because nobody asks you like, oh, where are you from? Who are your parents? Like, it just sounds like an interview if someone says that in English. But in Cree, that's just your first thing. It's just your ground level interaction, eh? Kagano uiake, kagwechimegek, tante o chiquia, tante gagio pigien. You just say, right? It's like, it's not a test, eh? It's just a conversation, eh? Pogo pigisquevinus, yapechita ya kinano, right? Nenanoak, ininoak, nihidoak, kagano, kinano. So that's kind of where I went, and with I guess going back to the question there, it's just taking me on this long journey of self-identity and also understanding that my family had not passed this language intergenerationally for many reasons, the influence of English, but also the non-encouragement of Indigenous languages, right, in the 40s and 50s in Canada. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Maggie?
Ayes logo siwak icha wasimasak nino te nehe now kiske wahemian. I learned it when my children were born. Kegats apetao beak askik, like about a year ago I started. Because koyan, ekwa kinanas kumitanawak nito temak wichi hinawaw. They help my friends. They help me speak Zoomich. Over Zoom, I started about a year and a half ago. Apsis pogo nehewan. I just speak a little bit.
Nistamina pogo apsis nehewan. Although I did grow up around it, however, I'm thankful for Negawi Nutawi exposing me to ceremonies, learning Oskapios, that role, and I never really had that opportunity to grow up with the older ones, the older generations, because they were all too busy, and I was just I was just a youngster, but I always understood the importance of it. My late elders. Andrew Wapas, when he first, I remember Kayas in grade school, every morning we start school with a smudge. Then you say, Uskapios, Skapiosak. And he always point at me and my other brother there, my friend. And then, we knew that meant something. We knew that, so we would get up and go help him, and he'd direct us. Next, I started taking that role more seriously as I grew up. There has been a lot of hardships that I have been through because of how I look and how I represent myself. A friend of mine, he was speaking to me in Cree, and I only understood half of what he was saying. And I was like, Kiko, yeah? And I was like, what did you say again? Then he looked at me, nah, why do you have this if you don't even understand your language? He grabbed my braid. That hurt. That really hurt my spirit. Especially someone coming from the older generations that should be teaching us. I thought about that experience. This was just like 6 years ago. And at that time too, I was raising little ones. I took that job on. I thought of my family that took care of me when I needed it. So I returned that favor for my nieces. Hearing them like, Uncle, let's sing the number song. "Uncle, let's sing the spring song." And like, I know that. I do know those songs. Hexa, we'd sing them. And that just made me like just sing. Like if I could relearn it and see them pass it on, it's what my late elders always wanted. That the spirit of the language keep living on generation after generation. And I was always told someone has to do it. Someone's gonna have to do it. It's a responsibility on all of us. So it could start with one. I left the reserve in 2017. Began my journey to explore more, and I still go back home for ceremonies. I still go back home to visit my family, to reconnect, for that grounded, to keep myself grounded. So like next week I'm going home, and I can't wait because I haven't went home since winter break, and that's too long. That's too long for me. So that's why I invest the time I have, is because I think of my nieces and nephews, Jitsums. Being an uncle is a big responsibility, and I take that to heart, especially as an Oskapios, being a helper and server for our youth and elders. Exa. Hey.
So what we'll do now with this next question is, what have been the hurdles and the benefits? What have been the results of learning while you're on your learning journeys, okay? What are some strategies that have worked for each of you?
I told you a barrier already of how I felt discriminated against my own friend. And I still call him friend because we have to forgive and forget and always remain humble, eh? So I didn't want to ever encounter anything like that, and I don't ever want anyone to go through that as well, especially as a learner, especially from something that was almost taken from us. And the benefits was this, like being surrounded by everyone, community. It's when I go home, I ask them, "Can you speak Cree to me?" And I'm still learning, and then they'll listen. I have those family that that support me now because they see how serious I am about this. It's because I've always asked, and then no one had the time to teach me. And I understand that because everyone has their own lives, eh? And I tried my best to expose myself to the circles, but some of the barriers was, for me, is that I grew up in the reserve where there was addictions was big, and it's hard seeing family and everything in that criteria. So you respect that, you let them heal on their own, but at the same time you want to help them and help yourself. So now I have that opportunity. I have a more clearer mindset of how to approach it now, how to approach my family, my elders, and my community. And yeah, that's my benefit is this right now. And I'm very thankful for that. Hi.
Biagioni machita yan tagas na hamaso yan ininiw-Anishinaabe nanto nakatosik pipo naspin ekwa nistam guys panik nigiskisin nigiwitamowigik ya atita inanawak mate masinay kaninimuin kitininiman kinistota winao masinay kan inanimuin kitapachitan egwenina nigieton kegwan maganama masinay kan inanimuin book Cree. They told me that I was speaking like this book Cree because nigi giskana hamasun tansita ayamishigean tamasanaikean, right? I was learning SRO syllabics, but I was practicing. I was trying to enunciate with the language, right? Negochitan tatugisigaw ta ininiw-Anishinaabe, right? I think, today I'm doing a lot better than I was in 2017. Right when I started learning, it was like, oh, this was a kicker for my learning journey. I was sitting with an elder in the Aboriginal Student Center at the University of Winnipeg. She supports me so much now, hey, but at this time, hey. So this was another experience. She was like, Mate, what are you even saying there? Muna kinistotatin. You sound like the priest when I was at residential school. I was like, tapway na. Muna kinistotawin. She's like, no, what are you saying? So I say it, and she says it basically almost the same way, hey? Back to me. I'm like, mate, nagiyatona nama. That was probably the lowest point in my learning journey. This was September 2017. And later on in December, January, after I was taking Cree classes with Ida Bear at the University of Winnipeg, she was like, I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, well, thank goodness I redeemed myself, eh? I was just kind of like, wow, you got to really get knocked down and then build your way back up. As something that I've come across is that her advice to me, because of my passion for Cree, I kept on persevering. However, for some people, that can break them. That could be like, no, I'm done, right? Like that's like I'm not going to learn, hey? I'll just listen to Cree, and then, at one time you'll come back to that in, 20, 30 years and say, oh, I wish I could have, I would have, right? This would have, could have, should have stuff. And in my journey, I've had people, say, oh, that's wrong dialect. Oh, we don't say that word, hey? I started using wahwa in Manitoba, hey? And dialect speakers like, mate, we don't say wahwa. I'm like, well, maybe we should, eh? Like, how do we say wahwa and dialect, eh? We say, kwachistagats, Yeah, where here they say, what's the gats? We just say the long way. Eh? I think the last thing I'll share is that tato gisigaw gananimo yan. Ka guchita yan, ka pechita yan. Nisipwe tamoawak, ka kino o nenowak, ininiw-Anishinaabe eguta, Manitoba. I'll just pick up the phone and I'll call someone. If they're from Cumberland House, Grand Rapids, Monanto, I'll just pick it up. I'll say, hey, tanse ka. Tanase taga-magisi and megats. Oh, namake kwan, emustiapian eguta. I like to visit, and I think that's something that it has complemented my academic, learning how to write, learning how to read the language. I've learned how to visit with Keitaeak, Oskinigiwak, just everyone, so that it gives me like a better worldview of, building relationships with community while also understanding how to write the language and, understand the academia, but also the literacy behind it, right? So I'm trying to put a couple different areas of expertise in my own to make me like a well-rounded Cree language learner, but also a well-rounded being, right? That's I think what's been a key to my success in my own language learning journey. Kinanasko mitinao.
Muna kinways kiskin wahamato yan. Maga nisot ne ots nisitote tan. Moya. Nasko mamawak kituam nitote mag Ben Godden, Aaron Faye, Salomo, Kevin, Cameron. Some amazing friends in this journey. I was nitoshin oskanaga sistegi kaite maga. I was born in Regina, no kompan ositao ostisiu oskay higanik. My grandmother, she was from Cumberland House. Well, my family was from Cumberland House, still live there. I was really disconnected, and Nikosis Okosio. My son was born. I knew I needed to work harder. So I just kind of went on Facebook. I found some amazing people. I didn't meet them for the longest time. Still haven't met a lot of them in person. We talk on Zoom. It's hard. The biggest barrier, I think, with that is just, glitching and you don't hear the full word. But I wouldn't be where I am today, being able to talk to my kids, talk to Kevin, talk to other speakers. I wouldn't be where I am today without it, because I live so far away from home. Yeah, that's como Mr. He, tanto quisigaw. I'm just grateful every day Nakasemaga.
And the last question was, now, if you had a dream, or you could dream up a program for yourselves as language learners, what would be the ideal space, or where would this happen? That's what I wanted to ask them as second language learners, adults, having children, having partners, and so on. What would the space look like?
I don't live anywhere close to Cree country, so I definitely like to have the virtual option. So I'm appreciative, but I always like coming home, being on the land and learning, getting connected and meeting people, just laughing and having fun and eating good food. I'm pretty simple when it comes to my dream needs.
I've had a few different experiences that have really helped me get to different levels in my own language learning ability. I think the first significant experience I had was, I'll do a shout out here, I did a Master Apprentice program with Dr. Belinda Daniels, Tanawa. Yeah, Victoria. That program with NLE, I was paired with a mentor for a year. And so Nigi Machi Dan with Kevin here. And eventually I also had George Cook from South End, Saskatchewan. So that program really took me to, I think, the next level in my language learning ability, and to be able to speak and to understand the language, because every week I would hear it, right? And I'd speak, I'd be able to ask a speaker one-on-one questions, right? You know, how to learn like future conditional in Cree, right? And how to use it, right? Like how do you put gisigao into future conditional, right? Oh, gisigage, right? You know, like stuff like that. So that was a successful program in my experience, as well as another program that Kevin talked a little bit about. Is I spent 3 months at I'd say an intensive Cree immersion camp. So May, June, and July, and then I did 2 weeks. I actually left early. I did 2 more weeks at an immersion camp in Northern Manitoba. So I did 3.5 months this past year of Cree immersion, and it was absolutely amazing. Hey, I got to speak the language. I got to hear the language. Nigi nahioan, nigi nenoan, egwan maga. Egwa mina nigi nahidoan apisis. I with George, I was able to learn a little bit of TH. I've learned N pretty much all in Manitoba, and then Y, I've had the pleasure of, learning a lot through the Kaniasik camp, as well as I spent a month at learning at Blue Quills alongside the students last year, right, in ceremonies and such like that. I would say, what would a program look like? Land-based immersion camps are great. Master's apprentice programs are great. Being paired with a mentor, right? So that's like the MAP, but being paired with like a mentor who's like your go-to, right? To mentor you through these obstacles, be your daily like contact, but also an Indigenous Explore program. Has anyone heard of Explore out of like the Government of Canada, English and French Explore? You can go to a French community in Canada and learn French for like a month, live with the family, and then French people who speak French as a first language can go to an English community and live with an English family. Having an Indigenous Language Explore program, and this is like what I'm going to my master's in the fall, so like this is something I really believe is what will take people to the next level, is when they're almost put in the deep end of an Indigenous language they're wanting to learn, right? Because it's sink or swim, hey? And that's, I think, what's going to take people to the next level, is to know you have supports, but you're also put in an environment where you have to say, ewe ininiw-Anishinaabe pogo, anis namawiak giskin tamek umaganasimuin, egwanima ewe gochitayan tanitanenoyan, egwanma egose. Right? So that's what we need to do to take us to the next level, is we need to almost do it where people that are 60, 70 years, 80 years old, they say, for the first 6 years of my life, I only spoke Cree. We need to really go back to that, hey, where we have that opportunity to get into the only Indigenous language experience rather than get away from the bilingual, because eventually we're going to have monolingual or somewhat bilingual speakers teaching the next generation. We need to get that generation with the tools and abilities like the first generation speakers here, that are first language speakers, Kevin, Dorothy, Kakanowiak, Rudy, we need first language speakers, and I think the Explore program, like to try to get you into that immersive experience that's consistent and supportive, I think that will take us to the next level.
For me, it's so weird. Like, I can understand, but I can't speak. It's like I need that translation as well. So that's where like having what it is like like having the object in front of you and teaching, and that's how I went about it. And I did it through virtual because as a learner, I thought might as well be a teacher because it's and teach it everywhere in any way I can when people come and ask me. Once I say I'm Nehio, people, hey, how do you say this? How do you say it? And I'm like, okay, I'm a learner myself, and but I'll get back to you. I'm thankful that I have everyone, a community in that sense that I can go ask them, and then I get to keep it as well, and as I get to teach it to what they asked me. Learning space, it varies from one-on-one to the environment to, as I mentioned, to in ceremonies. That's all you hear is your language is in these ceremonies. And it's a beautiful thing to be around because with the songs, that's where that intertwines as well. Is like with the songs, their songs are healing. They all have meanings, and that's once you get to understand and dive into your language more, you'll understand what these songs truly mean, what they really interpret, and how they heal. So like when I see powwows and round dances, like that's music of many languages around already, and then that's one big community. So that's one learning space, that language sharing, that culture sharing. It's like, and I always used to hear stories of Kayas. We used to like we were like that. We were trading. We were sharing knowledge. We were sharing medicines and being able to still do that in this day. We are at that point. Older generations are looking to guide us more to invest in that language acquisition. My late older brother and my oldest sister, they're the ones that are gifted with that fluency, that because they grew up with Muslim and Gugum. They had that opportunity. More money. I didn't have no one to learn from. That's why I felt so lost. But here I didn't realize because no one told me it's all around. No one told me that. I had to figure that self out. And with that, it's something that like, okay, how can I as a future educator do my best to bring these teachings into these spaces, these colonial spaces. And I'm going to use colonial spaces because I've always heard that a lot. So I'm going to jump on that boat because that's true, though, because my friends, my directors, my EDs, they told me, these weren't even meant for us. I wasn't even allowed to go apply because of being Indigenous. And that wasn't not too long ago, and that just makes me like, well, look where we're at now. We're bringing in our languages, we're bringing in our cultures, we're sharing, and I'm so grateful for that because I have Elsie, I have Francis, that they're my connection, that what keeps me grounded. That dream learning space, that's what I mean, it's like it's everywhere. It's and I was always told, don't be afraid to ask. Even if that person doesn't know, maybe they'll guide you to someone who they know. And I'm breaking out of that. I'm asking people now. Hey, can you help me out? How do you say this? How do you pronounce this? And then when they teach me, they say, don't write it down. I'm like, okay. Okay, I'll do my best to remember. I'll remember what it is I was taught and the teaching within it, and I'm like, holy, like this is like powerful stuff. This is the knowledge within that language, our languages. So yeah, everywhere would be a dream learning space. People who we meet, people who are that hold that gift, because we're the ones that are the carriers, and that's one thing. Yeah, it's as a future educator, I want to keep doing my best to connect with speakers, because it's I'll tell you this, I still do have a hard time finding that community that of speakers, but when I go home, it's only once in a blue moon I go home to. But other than that, though, it's my dream learning space would be everywhere, learning from things around you, and ceremony I mentioned, even our elders is the best learning space.
My name is Corinne Cross. I'm from Frog Lake First Nations, and this is our team. We're a team that it's called the Post-Majority under Social Development. We're here to learn how to teach. And I just wanted to acknowledge that you're trying, and don't be ashamed. And for me, I've learned Cree growing up. And at 4 years old or 5, I lost it. I can understand Cree. I couldn't have a conversation with anyone, but I can with my grandma or my uncle. And I acknowledge Levi, and I want to say how proud I am of you learning and how quick you were learning. So you give me hope for my children, because I'm one who didn't teach my children Cree, and I also was raised Christian and traditional. And so I was learned along the way to balance. My grandmother was a land-based. She taught us that, but along the way, somehow I lost to try to teach, because she would do the choke cherries behind the house, have a garden, and she would do the fish, and she was a tailor to the community. And somewhere along the way, we lost that, or I lost that. I don't know why I chose to. My mother died when I was about 13, but then she raised me. But along the way, I'm not sure how I didn't continue. And so I'm learning, or trying to learn my best to revitalize that. So I'm glad that I'm here, and I'm really proud of you guys.
Nigan nasku mau tawi mau kape mau ngoya huta egwa mina okuskaya mstai mamiti kwak ekwe nehiwetik big skrono egwansta umaga ki big stramaxia egi pe upigitik numusum egwa nogum egwa hektotse emamahtawa mamtonetsagan hektotse kapik skwe moikat kwangsksen egwa no matwo he tsagaste pe tsagana Kisven utahe aptita en mamtonetsagan kakeke kakeskimuin mantu egwama kasitoskaguin uguta isn stoemaya agek ugisakwa katayuganak aya uspagan kaitaskungetsak magegwama essuga egwa tatukissaka kananaskomo egwa mina kikutawane kapatsita kipiksground moi katats taptone hiaon magamina hasnipa tak apu kastewiastak eksise eise upegi goin kita pahaskane matsaka mistake mamitse hen tapuin kawit tamas kawit matsaki teak mistahe wamma essuga usam yaktahammak mamtonetsakan pegwane sam going the big scroll. Very proud of these young people and that ability to learn and use their language to agamemo is the word, not to give up and to believe in yourself. And this immersion in Cree, even though when I was 3 and 4 years old and brought to a lot of us as residential school and we weren't allowed to speak it, our minds are so powerful that the information that we get is so powerful, and if we use it on a daily basis, that we will never forget that, because it is part of you. It's that connection that you have with the spiritual world. It's that connection that you have with Askiup Matsun, Mother Earth, and that connection that you have with the wind, all these spirit guides that we believe in, because it's that powerful. So even when the singers, there's some here today, those words that they sing in round dance, powwow, traditional songs, sweat ceremony, it has those words that feed the spirit and that you can understand. And that's what Levi is saying when he said, I feel it, I understand it, but I can't speak it, but it'll come. It'll come. So I just want to encourage you to continue, and really proud of you today. Hi, hi.